All right, hello, welcome back, everybody. PayPal and Patreon are down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. I'm going to do something actually dangerous and show you where and how you can find a lot of the energy and natural resource and other kinds of data that I use in the videos. Risky because I could make my channel kind of pointless or redundant in doing so. But anyways, here we go. So for US oil production, the EIA, the US Energy Information Administration, actually publishes weekly updates on US field production. If you just Google search, like I showed you, US or US weekly oil production, this will be the first result on Google. And you have the graph there. And if you scroll down, then it will have all the actual individual numbers showing the month and the year that month is from and which week of the month, and thus give you the specific number. And scroll all the way down here, for example, and find the most recent one, first week of September 2024, 13.3 million barrels per day. So you can come here, get this one, hit the start, put in your bookmarks, and you can do a similar search to get this. Just type in EIA US weekly product supplied or weekly petroleum product supplied for the weekly updated US demand graph. And it has the same date, month, year, and week setup that you can look through. And coming down, you see the latest number was rounded about 19.4 million barrels per day. If you come down to the bottom here, click the middle link that says US weekly product supplied, and you will get a table layout that will actually show you the breakdown for each week. With the total up top, you'll see over here, most recent week, first week of September, total was 19.4, which broke down into about 8.5 million barrels per day of gasoline, 1.5 million barrels per day of jet fuel, 3.6 million barrels per day of diesel, and then everything else so on downwards. For OPEC data, you get the data from OPEC themselves. You can just literally put in OPEC oil production, and the top one here should be the OPEC link. If not, scroll down until you find this one. It will say historical production, and they have not really fixed their site, so it leads you to a site here where you have to click another link. But once you get to that one, then you will come down here, and their MOMR PDF will be published monthly, usually the second week of the month. So the one for September is already out. And so you just go to that, and once it downloads, at least having a slow download speed, then you click it and open it. So you go in, and they have a lot of like finances and like regular economic stuff. They get their like oil specific data. You have to scroll way, way down. Here they have both on this table the OPEC members and the OPEC friendship club, sort of the OPEC plus members that you can see the various production levels of, with obviously since August is the most recent completed month, that's the one you can find the production levels for. And also throughout the MOMR, they do have sections where they'll go into some specific countries and actually speak about or give expected dates for when new fields are going to start and how that's going to change their upcoming production levels. For a lot of the oil demand data, what you're going to want to go to is the JODI database. So if you look that up, this should be the first result, the Joint Organizations Data Initiative. So you go to the JODI Oil World database, and they also have natural gas data as well. In this one specifically, we're looking at the oil stuff, but we'll go to natural gas in a minute, and I'll show you how to work some of the math on that. So they have two types of data, and some is shorthand at the 15 months, some is all data. And in the secondary data section is where you will find the regular demand, and you can look at the numbers for individual products. But in our case, usually reporting on just total oil product demand, and you go over here and switch it from refinery outputs, obviously, to demand. And then for countries that publish demand data, at least, You can see the numbers. Scroll, it starts at about 2002, is as far back as it goes, and you can scroll all the way over up to summer of this year, most recently. So you can see Australia came in at 1.07 million barrels per day. Austria came in at 249. Azerbaijan came in at 121,000 most recently. And also, like I said, you can get the individual product number breakdowns for each individual month as well. And you can get the natural gas data if it feels like loading. I guess we have to click home. Okay, that works. So then you go to the natural gas data and you click on the gas thing, comes up here. And there's nothing else you really have to do to adjust it. A lot of the countries don't get their data actually put anywhere, but you can scroll down, and what you'll be looking for is the million standard cubic feet over here for the volumetric amount of gas produced. So they're doing, million standard cubic meters. You have to convert to the cubic feet, as the cubic feet per day is the usual statement thing as opposed to million cubic meters per month. So the way you convert over to cubic feet per day is you take the number that's shown, which in this case is 13.46 billion cubic meters. So you take that, input that, and cubic meters to cubic feet is times 35.3 roughly. So you do that and then divide by the number of days in that month. June has 30. So you would divide that by 30, and you get roughly 15.8 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas production for this is Australia. So that's how you do that. That's where you can get that data monthly for the countries that do actually publish that monthly data. As again, not everybody does. Now, for not necessarily data specifically, but for news and updates, you go to the Oil and Gas Journal this here. And some of the stuff is paywalled, unfortunately, but not all of it is, thankfully. And they have different sections. They have the overall pileup, but the ones usually you'll be most interested in are exploration and development, for example. So this is where you'll find updates and stuff getting published about new fields that have been discovered in specific areas or in drilling and production. A lot of the time is where you'll see articles and updates coming out about this field here or that field there, starting up production for the first time. Another excellent source of overall data that is unfortunately only a yearly update is the Statistical Review of World Energy, which is pretty easy to look up. It's now under the Energy Institute. It used to be done by BP. It was better under BP because BP published a lot more thorough stuff. Energy Institute has kind of streamlined it or chopped it down a bit. But anyways, you come in here and the PDF download is right there. I already have it or should still have it. We go here, should be this one. So they'll have all kinds of stuff, including they have a full country by country breakdown table for CO2 emissions. And past that, you have the oil production stuff broken down in different types, 1,000 barrels per day, million tons per year, per annum, so that's per year. And then further down, it breaks it into like different categories, like natural gas liquids versus total liquids versus regular crude. And then it also has other random categorizations like measurements in exajoules. Well, no one really measures it in exajoules. Then it has the oil consumption numbers, and then you can see some of the breakdowns by product group for the yearly average. You go down further past everything. They also have refining capacity. You go down further through the trade movements, and eventually you get to natural gas. And here you can get at least the most recent yearly average numbers for countries that don't publish monthly data under the JODI initiative. So here it's in billion cubic meters over the course of the year. So to get the billion cubic feet per day conversion, you have to do math again. So reopen the calculator and to show For example, we'll do Argentina. So Argentina, 41.6 billion cubic meters over the course of the whole year. So 41.6 times, as we said before, 35.3. And that gets you that number, divide by 365 for all 365 days of the year. And you get an average production, natural gas production for Argentina of just over 4 billion cubic feet per day in 2023, which was the most recent year. For certain types of live stuff, for example, tracking the current demand levels on electricity grids, only two countries actually have that, and that is the US and the UK. So for here, you put in the EIA electric grid monitor. You go to that, it should be the right one. Yep, hourly electric grid monitor. And that will bring you right here, which will show you the most recent amount in gigawatts or 1,000 megawatts. And that will be off to the side here. And sometimes it gets frozen for a few hours. Like, for example, 5:47 Alaska time is 9:47 p.m. Eastern time. So the most recent hour it should be showing is 8 p.m., but it's stuck at 6 p.m. for the moment. But don't worry, it will unfreeze itself. And you'll see that. And you can also come down and see here how the demand fluctuates over the course of each day and between the different times of each day. For the UK's live grid tracker, you type in UK National Grid Live, and this one, the one with the tricolor split piece symbol up there, should be the first one that comes up. And different layout, but gives you the same thing. You'll have generation over there. Demand will be up here though, so you can also compare the two as they do next to it, with the UK currently at this moment generating about 16.8 gigawatts and having to rely on 3.2 gigawatts of imports from Norway and France primarily. And it shows you the breakdown of each different generation type and the transfers, the UK having to rely on other countries. It also shows you the current inflow amounts or the current percentages that they're relying on them by. And then they do show you past stuff, and you can switch between past week, past year, all time, etc., etc. For the monthly updated global oil demand and supply numbers, you should type in ERCE, global oil demand, and hopefully it should bring up the correct one. There should be a 6 in front of it, and it should be oil demand and supply. You go in and it should be, once you let that advertisement get out of the way, of course. This is what you should see. You'll have this graph here, and it will show the 12-month average along with the actual individual numbers for each month, which are the green lines spiking up and down. So turn off the average just so I can make sure you can see. So the green line spiking up and down. And for example, April 2020 there was the lowest global oil demand level in quite a long time because every country was in the COVID lockdown, and it dropped all the way down to only about 84 million barrels per day. Whereas most recently, in June, it set a new record high of 103.8. But then obviously you can come over here and you can switch it over to supply. Same thing, there's a solid line for the 12-month average, and there's the actual individual blue line that spikes up and down that shows the exact each monthly number. And you can, of course, overlay them and see how they work with or against each other. And you can turn off either type there, then switch those back on and switch those off instead, and just look at the averages as they overlap or underlap each other. Not directly tied to energy and resources, but for tracking stuff, for visualizing things if you want to, marinetraffic.com. If you come to this site, this is a live website that shows you marine traffic, obviously, over the entire planet, over the entire oceans. So you can zoom in here, and blue vessels are passenger vessels. Green The green arrows are for cargo ships. The red arrows are for energy vessels, so oil tankers, LNG tankers, what have you. So zoom in, for example, and pick one, and you'll see this one here, the MSC Silvana. It's a container ship, or people commonly refer to these types as a cargo ship. The proper term is container ship or container vessel. That's what the green ones are. And then we swing out over here, get some of the big tankers. We hit the Persian Gulf. Here, Yuan Shanhu. Yuan Shanhu, this one you can see is a massive oil tanker, most likely of the 2 million barrel carrying variety, and is heading from Qatar to China. And for the aviation equivalent of this, you have something called FlightRadar24.com. FlightRadar24.com shows you, obviously, air traffic as opposed to marine traffic. And if you're familiar with aircraft, you should be able to tell some of them by their initial silhouette or shape right away. Like this is an A340. Yep, an A340-600. That's my favorite airplane, actually. So of all the ones we could have clicked on. But yeah, you can see the same type of data, origin and destination. And scroll down, you'll get altitude, current speed, and just hold the cursor over it and it'll convert it for you. Same if you're not used to using feet. The entire global aviation industry uses feet for flight levels, but if you want to know it in meters, just hold the cursor over it. It'll show it in meters. And Europe is pretty empty at the moment because it's the middle of the night there, obviously. But that is a site for live flight tracking as opposed to live marine traffic tracking. And then for water stuff, for a lot of the US lakes water levels that update daily, the Lakes Online or uslakes.info is the site that I use most of the time since it's the most up to date and kind of the better presented one. So for here example, you can see Lake Mead's water level, and keep in mind the water levels of reservoirs are measured in elevation feet, not depth of the lake, but how high the water surface is above sea level. And if you just look up any lake's water level, Lakes Online should be the top result. This is one of the rare occasions where Google actually is putting the, most appropriate results at the top instead of strange advertisements. And in some cases, an entire Google scroll page worth of advertisements. And for South Africa's water supply, at least, you can track that. Cape Town being one of the more famous places worldwide that has constantly come very close to running out of water. You you should just type in capetown.gov and this .za water should be the first thing that comes up. And if you click on the Western Cape Dam levels, that should take you to, if it feels like loading. If not, I have a direct link. Here we go. Well, there's the bookmark anyways. Don't forget, obviously, to bookmark all of these things. But it should take you here, and you will see individual reservoirs. You'll see the total percent storage full and the date, and then you'll see comparisons to the previous year, this week of the previous year. Now for some data on metals and minerals and mining stuff. For the widest array of data covering the most amount of things, you will find that in the annually published USGS-MCS. 2024 would be the most recent year, obviously. So you go to here and you download it. I already have it, so I'm not going to download it a second time. But they should also, or at least they used to, let us search together and see if they still have the selection from previous years. So there's a 2024 one. Okay, there we go. So there is the sections there. That was the third or second Google result. Will bring you to this page with all the different past year ones back to 97 or 96. But you download that, and that will look like That will look like this when you open it. And here's a list you can see of all the different metals and minerals that it contains information for. So we scroll down through the contents and preamble type stuff to get down to some of the actual data. Let's just jump at random. Lead, there we go, for example. So there will be 2 pages for each. The first page will be, this is the first page actually, sorry. The first page will be US data, and it will show in 1,000 metric tons for lead's case. It will show back about 4 or 5 years of mining data. So show you the amount of lead mined each year in that case. And if you look in the top paragraph, usually it will give you some more generic information about the metal that is not just US specific, but in general, like it'll tell you in most cases what percentage the metal was used for in each type of thing. Then if you scroll down to the second page, you will see the listing of countries who mine a reasonable or significant amount of the metal. And on there, each MCS will only contain the 2 previous years as opposed to 5 for other countries. So to get all of that particular data, you need to look at all the different MCS, or you can look at the graphs that I've made, which are on a specific site or in a specific Google Drive, which I will show you guys in a minute. But for example, in lead's case, looks something like this for lead production in million tons total globally over the course of time. For more up-to-date stuff, for more immediate, like monthly things, there are a few specific sites for other metals or for some specific metals. For example, copper. The International Copper Study Group, if you just search that up, or you can just put in icsg.org, that will bring you to their page, and you hold the cursor over About Copper, go down to Select Copper Statistics, and you will get a selection of things. The top one is the one I go to most often because that's the one that gives you the PDF with the most recent mining data. And so you see obviously production from world copper mines up through June of this year. So January through June, so the first half of this year so far, compared to the first half of last year, 10.8 million tons last year in the first half, 11.1 million tons this year in the first half. And then a bit further down in that second bit, you can see the total amount of copper gained through primary production and secondary refined copper production. That's copper that was obtained through recycling. And then obviously down under that, you get the total amount derived from that. And then if you drop down to the next blue highlighted thing, then that is the total copper usage. So you can compare the two versus each other, unless you can see why and how the total global copper inventories or copper stocks have changed in a specific direction. These things over here, the refined copper stocks, those are the total amount of copper, excess copper in storage and global inventories. Going from left to right, we have built up over the last 4 months to 1.54 million tons of excess copper in storage. You can get similar monthly updated data throughout the year for lead and zinc. If you go to the lead and zinc study group, once that site loads, International Lead and Zinc Study Group. So if you just look them up, you should be able to come to their page. It'll probably say the page can't be found, just ignore that. Go over to statistics and go down to free access data, ironically the same thing that I named my Google Drive folder that all of you have access to. And if you click on that, it will bring you to this, and it will show you a table, and it will show you a similar table to the copper website. It will show you up to whatever month they have loaded. So January through June of this year thus far. And then below that, it will have in the second row total production, which is including that from mines and that from recycling. And then at the bottom, obviously, total usage so that you can compare those two. And it has both lead and zinc. And then if you go down, the line here is the price, and the bars are the total excess amount of that metal in storage inventories. price is over here. The amount in thousands of tons in storage is on the left. And of course, there's also the Silver Institutes or silverinstitute.org, and they have the different categories you can look through, such as the different breakdown of silver in different industries, the largest consumer of which is photovoltaics or solar panels now. One other site you can go to is also peakoilcharts.com. This is a site that was shown to me by a viewer or shared with me via email recently, and I promised that I would include the site in a few videos, and this video obviously is kind of perfect for that. There's a few issues at the moment, like there's some data issues here, for example, in the global oil demand charts, where he suddenly has it down at only 45 million barrels a day when that is not the case. So I don't know what's going on there. I think they might have accidentally typed in some wrong numbers, but this is an excellent site they made where you can actually adjust the graph in real time. So you can say exclude the US, for example. You click on a country and that excludes it, and you can then see what the graph looks like with or without that country. And it looks pretty much the same when you exclude the US, for example, because the US oil demand has been pretty constant for the last 20 or 25 years or so. So you can do stuff like that on the oil demand part or oil consumption. To get to the oil consumption one, just go to any of the consumption ones like European Union oil consumption, and then just go back over here and click include all, and it will switch back to the full global one. From there, you can then exclude or include countries at your leisure. But it also has other things like oil production, OPEC oil production. You can exclude certain OPEC members, gas production, electricity, and everything. And the very last resource data locale I will point you to is my own Google Drive folder, the free access data resources drive, which if you just go under any of my recent videos, it is always in the description. So just click that link and it will take you here to this drive that has a whole bunch of different docs in it where I put together and update all kinds of different graphs and charts and everything. For example, the latest one I've put together and started uploading to is oil consumption breakdowns, where you can see pie charts that show the composition of oil consumption for the world as a whole, along with individual countries, like going down to see the US for an individual country example, 20 million barrels per day of oil demand. The US, that comes out as 9 million barrels per day of gasoline, 4 of diesel, 1.7 of jet fuel, 1.1 million barrels per day as plastics, so on and so on. I have all kinds of other stuff as well. Like for just one more random one, we have the petrostates economic dependency graphs, where I show stacked up each petrostate's GDP or economic numbers and differentiate by coloring on the graph how much of their economy is coming from their oil and gas revenue. So you have countries like Saudi Arabia, where you can see it fluctuates between third and a quarter. Whereas if you go down to, say, Kuwait, you can see Kuwait is 50% dependent on its oil and gas revenue. And that's just two examples. I have like 12 to 15 different docs in here with all kinds of stuff. I do try to update them as frequently as possible, but it is kind of tedious and sometimes I'm lazy, so I do apologize for that. But that is there for you to use. And that will be it for this video. So thank you everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. PayPal and Patreon are down there if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. Uh, a link to this drive will be in the description of the video, like it is in basically every video now, as well as a link to my Instagram, where I'm now uploading my photography, 1 or 2 shots a day, most of which are from the past when I had more freedom of movement to go places. But if you're interested in taking a look at any of the shots I've gotten over the past decade or so, then that link is there. A link to my catch channel will be in the top pinned comment as well. May God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.